Hello everyone and welcome back to your weekly PlayStation podcast, Talking the PS, where we'll round up all the gaming and PlayStation news for your listening and viewing pleasure right here on youtube.com/Helix Plays Games and up in the digital clouds on your podcast preference of choice. We've got a great show lined up for you this week where we're going to be talking about E3 being dead, PSVR2 being dead, and Resident Evil 4 not being dead. And joining me is Mr. Rob.
Hello, also not dead for the record.
Yeah.
Just in case there was any confusion.
Yes, Rob's not dead, and neither is Chris. And neither is Talking the PS. It's very much alive. We've got a great show lined up for you. But before we get into it, make sure if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And hit that bell icon so you know when all of our great content drops, such as XPass, where yesterday we broke down all the Xbox gaming news. We probably also talked a bit about E3 being dead in that show as well, because it's probably the biggest news story potentially of the year, to be honest, in some ways.
Yeah, in a cultural way, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a weekly Let's Plays where last Thursday, Chris came off the bench to do a first look at Amazon Luna for the channel, and he announced a new show that we're going to be bringing to you. Details aren't finalised yet, but we are very much looking forward to it. It'll be a new Luna-based podcast called Luna Listening. So check out, we have dropped the trailer on our socials, so head over to the socials at Helix Plays Games on Twitter or our Discord server. Everything's in the link. All the links in the description for you below to find out more about that. But before we get into it, Rob, been playing anything interesting?
Literally only one thing and one thing only, and it's been Resident Evil 4. And I'm taking my sweet time with it because it's a fantastic, fantastic game. Arguably, this is going to be like a difficult one, but I'd say it does better than the original in many, many ways. So, absolutely love it.
You kind of hope it would as a remake. You kind of want, if you're going to remake something, you kind of need to bring it up to a higher quality than the original, in my view.
So I guess the difference is, like the comparison I made in my own head was, I would go back and play the original Resident Evil 2 because that has a certain style and a certain kind of I don't know, like permeance to me, which Resident Evil 4 no longer has, because I think the play style is a bit closer compared to 4 and the remake compared to 2 and the 2 remake. Like the period of time which is like kind of passed and updated with the 2 remake was massive, and like it moved away from isometrics and stuff like that. Whereas 4 is like a bit more closely linked, I guess. But
I know what you mean. As someone who's not really played much Resident Evil, but more of someone who appreciates it from the outside, I dare say if they just went, we're going to remaster Resident Evil 4 and just move it on to modern hardware, give it like a 60 frames per second patch, a few quality of life fixes, I think people would have been generally probably happy.
Yeah.
Because I think when I've looked at it, it doesn't look like an old game.
Oh, no, absolutely not. And I think something gets lost when you move away from that fixed camera of like the original games, which like 1 and 2 and 3 had. Like when you had a fixed camera, every shot was considered, if that makes sense. So like you would run into a room and like suddenly you'd see a body appear and you don't know if that body's going to move. And then you run to the next part where the camera switches and suddenly you can't see that area where the body is. And it's fuck.
I think it adds to the tension. I remember playing like the first Resident Evil or even like the GameCube remake of it. Like not being able to just see round corners what's coming up did put you on edge. It's like because you don't know what's going to be around the next corner. And sometimes you turn on the corner, you're in these tight corridors and the thing's there.
Yeah, so like obviously like with like the over the shoulder camera, which is a standard now, you lose that, which is fine because kind of the medium's moved on. But that's why I would still play the original Resident Evil 2 for that. But I don't feel like I need to play the original Resident Evil 4 in any time period. But yeah, anyway, divergent there. But I'm playing Resident Evil. I'm up to the island. and I'm loving it. What are you playing?
I am playing Octopath Traveler 2. I have rolled credits on Hogwarts Legacy. I've got the platinum, and now I've got about 10 hours in Octopath Traveler 2.
So here's an interesting question before you hop on to like the Octopath kind of discussion. Now that you've kind of completed Hogwarts Legacy,
yeah,
what do you think of it purely as a game as opposed to like manifesting Harry Potter in the gaming world, if that makes sense?
All right. I mean, I think strictly speaking, when you look at Hogwarts Legacy, you have to kind of think about it in terms of manifesting Harry Potter world, because that's a big part of the charm. But if I was to pick, like, if I was like, I have no background with Harry Potter, it's just some dude with glasses and a scar on his head, and I have no insight of what this is, I still think it's a great game. I think we touched on this a bit last week, where it's like, it does have some like older gameplay sensibilities in some way, but I think the magic of that world and the way they've managed to like realize it does kind of paper over the cracks quite a lot. It's just like weird things I think Chris brought up before. I can't remember whether it was on a show or just to us in private, where it's like, it's kind of weird. You can just rest to change like the time from night to day, but your character will just go to sleep on the floor. Just so then it'll just wake up. The first time I did it, I was in herbology. I was waiting for herbology class, so I'm just like, my character just woke up in the middle of the floor of a greenhouse, and there's students all around us, and it's like that kind of weird stuff. Like,
yeah. Do you think it's like a Game of the Year contender?
I do. I think it is. I don't think it will win, but I do think it will be in the mix. I think
maybe like
there's some heavy
sound
hitters
design or something, or
yeah, sound design could do it.
Yeah, but one of the categories of.
Yeah, I think it might pick up an award or two in different categories, but I think it might be shortlisted for Game of the Year. But I mean, this year is looking like, especially the back end is looking quite stacked.
There's
a
hell of a lot of competition, isn't there?
It's already going up against, well, Octopath Traveler 2. It's going up against Resident Evil 4. It's going up against, what else great games have come out this year I'm blanking on. We've got stuff like, we've got two Final Fantasies coming out this year. Like,
yeah.
Spider-Man's probably coming this year. There's all this stuff like that's going up against, but I think it'll be in the shortlist.
Yeah, fair. So how are you finding Octopath?
I love it. It is very much Octopath Traveler 2, if that makes sense. It's like, there is not really any improvements from the first game. There's more of it. There's more of it. It's like, it is very much a sequel. It's not like sequel in terms of story. It's like, he's a new world. He's 8 more characters. Each of them are going to have like effectively a kind of short story that they're going to tell, and they're going to meet each other through the travels. You can start with any character you want, like you could in the first game. You still got the class system, which they've tweaked the classes a bit, but it's not like they haven't like completely chucked everything out and start from scratch.
So what's the time difference between those two, the first and the second?
What, in terms of release?
Yeah, like just roughly.
I'm not sure when the first one came out, but it came out in 2018, so it's like 5 years.
Yeah, and like, I think especially in this like little period we've been in gaming, like there's been like some developments, but there's also been kind of like a bit of flatline. So maybe like, I don't necessarily think like a sequel has to completely like bin off everything or like kind of revolutionize what's already been done.
I think you have to look at it in context. Octopath, there has been some evolution of the gameplay. There's a few extra features they've brought in. It's not like they've just went, okay, let's just tell a new story and just go with it. They have like tweaked things, improved things. Like, there is more of a day and night cycle now, which you can actually just completely control with one button. It flicks from day to night instantly, and different like characters you make. No, just the game just transitions, but different characters within, like, say if you're in a town at night, certain characters might be out in the streets or in a bar, and during the day they might be somewhere else. And your class jobs was how you can sometimes like interact with characters, things like you can like coerce them, or you can literally mug characters, or different, like, kind of these class skills that each of your character has. You have one for the day, one for the night.
Yeah.
So they've tweaked and improved stuff like that. But with Octopath Traveler, it was a very beloved game because it came out. It's almost like a throwback to like SNES style RPGs.
Yeah.
Like, and
they've kind of give you more of that for the sequel, and that's all. That's all everybody wants.
They don't need. It's like one of them. We don't need to rip up the rule book with this because the game was good enough, and because it is kind of a love letter to an older era of like JRPGs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it doesn't need to be at the cutting edge of like of a gameplay design. It's a turn-based RPG. Like,
yeah,
you're clicking what attack you want through a menu. There's no really other way you can do that too much. Like, things like Final Fantasy 15 and Final Fantasy 7 Remake kind of have these hybrid action stroke turn-based systems. But this is just straight turn-based. Like,
yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like that kind of hybrids, I'm not a huge fan of it. Like, I think it was it 13? Final Fantasy 13 the first introduced it, or was it maybe? No, it was 12.
I didn't play 13.
Yeah,
it would have been one after 10.
One.
For me, I actually think the best JRPG battle system I've ever played is actually Final Fantasy X. What I like about that system is it is a turn-based system, so you have the whole strategy element of playing as a turn-based game rather than the more Twitch-focused action-oriented. I like action RPGs and I like turn-based RPGs. I like them both. Mm-hmm. The hybrids kind of lose a bit of both, in my opinion. With Final Fantasy X, I like the fact that speed was important. Where a lot of turn-based RPGs, take Pokemon for example, speed pretty much just goes who goes first, and that's about your lot.
Yeah, unless you've got like hasten or something like that.
Yeah, well, it's like where you could actually in Final Fantasy X, you had like that action bar that would fill up, and if your character was fast, you'd basically get more goes. And it kind of made sense.
I remember, was it Riku in number 10? Riku, yeah, like you could just spend her to be like have like 3 attacks in like in a normal cycle of.
And
like,
I abused haste in that game.
Yeah, completely. But no,
so stuff like that. But no, Octopath Traveler 2, I'm loving it. I put 10 hours in this matter of like days. So. Yeah.
Hence the coffee right now, I guess. Which is
probably I was up quite late. Yeah. Thank you, Starbucks. Not sponsored, but you make delicious coffee.
Yet not sponsored yet.
Yeah. Right. Talking about not sponsored, Rob, would you like to introduce us to the
properly prepared PlayStation perusing points, aka the
news? And as always, our news section is brought to you by our Helix Heroes, which you can join for as little as 99p over on our YouTube channel. Links, everything you need, description below. First story of the week, Rob. Oh, I should mention, I'm playing Octopath Traveler 2 on Switch, and it runs absolutely fine.
Second story of the week.
Yeah, first story. I was saying that because I've been quite negative on the Switch recently because of how abysmal Pokemon ran. But I think Octopath is a game where, it totally suits the Switch. Anyway, first story of the week. PlayStation Plus games for April. So we have 3 games coming out. This is available for you on the Essential tier and will be available, I think it's 4th of April they all drop. And we get Sackboy's Big Adventure, Tales of Iron, and Meet Your Maker. So which one do you want to tackle first, Rob?
I mean, I guess let's talk a bit generally. It's not a stellar month, is it really? Like,
yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I should point out that Meet Your Maker is a day 1 release, so the game drops day 1 onto Game Pass, onto PlayStation Plus. So it's hard to know how good that game actually is. And there's a bit of buzz around Tales of Iron as an RPG, but it seems to be like a bit hardcore RPG. And there's a couple of articles I've seen saying like, "Don't sleep on this game," that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, like I imagine it's a solid title, but
yeah,
I guess the argument for me is, would I have played this if it wasn't on PlayStation Plus? And the answer is probably no. So like, it's hard to kind of judge like a game I know nothing about, and I'm getting for free, but I probably still won't play it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I hadn't even heard of this game till I started pulling together the show. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad game. It just didn't permeate, and I am an RPG fan.
Yeah, that's the thing, and again, this is where PlayStation Plus like continuously suffers in comparison to Game Pass, because obviously like the games that come in a Game Pass kind of have a bit of momentum behind them and a bit of kind of buzz and marketing. But if this game released not on PlayStation Plus, it would have completely passed, I think, both of us by, and we do a PlayStation podcast. That's my criticism of kind of this. But maybe that's been unfair. The game itself is probably solid.
Yeah, I mean, looking at reviews on Metacritic, it currently holds a Metascore of 81 and a user score of 7.1 on PS5. There's a lot of 10s in this, though. A lot of 9s and 10s. And then there's some 6s, 5s and 6s. Both on the press and the user side. So I kind of feel, is this a bit of a Marmite game? Where if it lands for you, you fall in love with it. It's one of them where if you're not, it's like, why, it's not for me. Like someone described it as a poorly designed 2D Souls-like.
Oh, if there's any Souls element to it, I'm out.
Well, I think that's... Too much Warlong. I'm taking that as a kind of cheap goal because it's got difficulty. You know how some people just go, oh, it's a hard game, therefore it's a Souls-like.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Where this is a turn-based action app, it's a turn-based RPG 2D game. It's about as far from being a Souls-like game as you can get.
Yeah.
Without being like fair. Peppa Pig.
Yeah, I mean, I think the summary for me on this game is that, like, I work a lot of hours, you work a lot of hours, this game's going to require a lot of hours. If there's no buzz around it, like, regardless of me getting it for free or not, the time investment's just too big a barrier to be interested, I think.
I think this is one of them games where if I wasn't just coming off the back of Hogwarts Legacy and jumping straight into Octopath and I wasn't looking around the corner at Jedi Survivor, basically if I was in that, you occasionally get a period where you go, I don't know what to play, I might have given this a go, because it's only a fairly short game, it's about 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
I think the art style looks pretty cool, like almost like a storybook kind of art style.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
But it's going to be a pass for me, at least for now, because I've just got other stuff to play. And if I want a brutal, difficult experience like I do, which I will be bringing you on Thursday, I've got Elden Ring, good to go. Happening this week. Actually happening this week. I was going to do it last week, then Chris jumped in with Luna stuff, and then I got busy genuinely planning my holiday for the summer. So it was a whole, I had to move quickly because I've gone away with work and I had to link up what I'm doing with my holiday. So I was like, okay, I need to get it done get sorted quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I wasn't on the stream on Thursday, like, because I was busy like weighing up pricing hotels.
And then crying silently as well, I guess.
Yeah, about the price. Yeah. Any
interest in Sackboy?
None. Straight up none.
Me neither.
So I'll read from the PlayStation blog. Sackboy: A Big Adventure. An iconic PlayStation hero Sackboy bursts back into breathtaking action with a huge, fun and frantic 3D multiplayer platforming adventure. Go solo in an epic race against time stuffed with danger and peril, or enjoy local or online party play, creating teams of 2 to 4 adventurers as you work together to overcome the various tasks however you can imagine, including unmissable co-op-only levels. I've read that in a kind of weird way. Like, the cadence of my reading that was kind of a bit off there, but you get the point. Yeah. It feels like Little Big Planet without the creativity.
which is just a death sentence, right? Like,
yeah, is Sackboy nowadays? Let us know in the comments if you think. Do you think Sackboy is now still an iconic PlayStation mascot? Because I feel Astrobot took his mantle.
Yeah. I feel like Sackboy was definitely a PlayStation 3.
I think, yeah, Sackboy I view, and like Little Big Planet I view as like the mascot of the PS3 era.
Yeah, 100%. And it was great at the time, but I think, like, things come, things go, and that's fine. And I think Sackboy is one of them.
I think this was, if I remember rightly, this did come out on PC. It was one of the PC ports, and I think it was like the worst performing of them in terms of sales. Like, comfortably. I mean, I think it's getting like 8 out of 10s and stuff. It's not like it's a bad game. I'm just looking at it and going, it's another game that it's just not for me. It's like,
yeah, I think the market's just shrank for that type of title, and not the market overall, but I think it's moved on to different. I'm not
sure it has. I think we've just aged out of it, because it's clearly this is one of them. It's very much aimed at, I think, a younger audience. Yeah,
fair point. But I think we'll see it kind of. I think we'll see Sackboy as like a secondary mascot. Yeah, popping up in other stuff as opposed to many more future titles.
To be honest, I think if they just brought out another Little Big Planet, it might work. But although I think these kind of game with things like Roblox existing, I think if you try to make a game that is effectively about making games, I don't think the work as well. I think that kind of space has been captured entirely by like Roblox for the younger audience.
Like the kind of like the creator kind of game has developed like massively since Little Big Planet.
And I know Creator tried, and Creator was awesome. We've got a few streams on Creator on the channel back in the Stadia days, and that unfortunately died a death. Not because of Stadia, they actually moved away from just being the Stadia exclusive. And the last game you'll get, at least on your day one, because if you get your mid-month stuff as well, which is usually actually I find the more interesting stuff now with PlayStation Plus.
Yeah,
the last game is Meet Your Maker. Yeah, it's talking about creation games. So Meet Your Maker is a post-apocalyptic first-person building and raiding game where every level is designed by players. Lazy developers making the players switch between roles as you mastermind devious outposts filled with traps and guards, then gear up for methodical, fast-paced combat raiding other players' creations, gaining an edge by choosing the right loadout, melee, ranged, defensive perks and consumables to match your challenge or playstyle, combine your creativity, and build with a friend or join forces to raid outposts as a team of 2.
It seems like a kind of interesting concept. I don't have the capacity for that stress in my life of having my base essentially just like canned overnight. But genuinely, it seems like a pretty solid title.
Worst thing about Metal Gear Solid 5 isn't the fact that the game is basically unfinished. It's the mother base stuff. You spend ages building your mother base, and then it just gets destroyed. It's like,
like someone steals all your best soldiers and stuff like that.
I think it happens like as part of a story element initially, and then it opens you up to the online stuff. And I was like, I remember when that happened to me, I was like, okay, I'm now done with mother base. I have no interest in the online stuff in this game. Like, zero, and now you've just ruined all my stuff. That part of the game is now just done.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, once you get like the translators for your the soldiers you need, like that stopped being a consideration for me. It's like, well, like I don't really care to find like the S-class recruits and stuff anymore. Like just get me out of it.
But going back to Meet Your Maker, I think this game looks pretty damn cool actually.
It has a really nice style to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it has a nice style. It's kind of like Doom meets Destiny meets Fortnite in a way, but it's not like, I don't think you're building too much when you're in game. I think you build like your levels and your outposts as they call them before you jump in. We should mention as well, this is a day and date release to PlayStation Plus, which I think is actually a great move for this sort of game, because games like this need a critical mass of players to sustain themselves.
Yeah, I think anything that relies on the audience playing it, like bringing them to day one
Yeah.
on kind of subscription services, is the correct play. Like Chivalry 2 kind of benefited a lot from that, much to Chris's despair.
Yeah.
But like, that game really benefited, and I think other games of the same kind of multiplayer ilk do as well.
Yeah, I think this is very much for me. I'm looking at it and going, you know what, this is a cool game. I think we'll have to check out on the stream one day.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd be cool to actually have some of the audience like build a base, and then me, you, Chris go raid it. Although I think it's teams of 2.
Yeah, the 2 things are a bit limiting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fine. We can just get someone else in. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, easy. But yeah, I think for me, Meteor Maker is the standout, but I still think overall it's a bit of a weak showing. But mid-month, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think with the revamp of PlayStation Plus and the fact that mid-month games exist, the day and date they're like the early release games don't necessarily need to be lights out stuff anymore. Because I'm not looking at these 3 games and going, this is why I'm playing for PlayStation Plus. What I'm looking at is the entire catalogue that I've got because of premium, going, this is why I'm paying for access to this catalogue rather than just these 3 games this month.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And ironically, this month I'm probably not going to play any of them. Like, I'm probably not going to play a single game on PlayStation Plus this month. I think that is a fair bet, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm considering pausing it for a bit.
I've paid for a year, so I've got it.
Okay. But yeah, anyway, we'll see.
Let's move on then. E3, Rob. It's dead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think
for real people, this time.
Yeah, there's not many people who didn't see this coming, I don't think, but it is a bit disappointing.
Yeah. So this is the news that E3 2023 has officially been cancelled. Reading this from a statement, this was a difficult decision because of all the effort we and our partners put towards making this event happen. But we had to do what's right for the industry and what's right for E3. We appreciate and understand that interested companies wouldn't have playable demos ready, and that resourcing challenges made being at E3 this summer an obstacle they couldn't overcome. For those who did commit to E3 2023, we're sorry we can't put on the showcase you deserve and that you've come to expect from ReedPop's event experiences. So ReedPop are the company that the ESA have teamed up with to put the showcase on.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're going to talk about like kind of COVID having an effect on the past few years, but I feel like it just sped up the inevitable.
Yeah, well, I'll touch on COVID a bit. I mean, I think what the final nail in the coffin for this year was Ubisoft pulling out, because that was originally just the story that we were going to be talking about, that Ubisoft pulled out of E3, and then a couple of days later, literally, E3 just went, we're done this year, it's not happening. But I was thinking about this, touching on COVID, what I think COVID's done is, you know how in a lot of industries, COVID's forced people to work from home, then businesses realise, all my staff is just as productive, if not more productive, working from home. They're genuinely happier because they're not wasting sometimes hours of their time every day sat on busy commuter trains in basically horrible conditions, getting like sandwiched. We've all seen like photos of people getting literally like forced onto trains, like the conductors, like that sort of thing. People not doing that. It's like, so my staff are happier, more productive, and now I don't have to pay for a really expensive office in the middle of London. Something similar, I think, has happened with video game marketing, where E3 was the place where you marketed your video games. It was also where you get a lot of like face-to-face meeting of different developers and publishers, and that kind of the industry all converge on one place for like a week and went, we're all here together, let's do the thing. Then when it came to the marketing side, so there was a big showcase, which is the marketing side. On the show floor, you had all the demos and booths and stuff. That like to mainly aimed at the press, to be honest, more than the consumer. The consumer element was largely just, let's be fair, a money spinner for the ESA to keep in business.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
What I think COVID's done is Well, COVID has created a situation where the likes of Sony and Microsoft, not so much Nintendo because they were already doing the directs, and Ubisoft and EA went, well, we can't just walk into E3 every summer, stand on the stage and give this big presentation and kind of, that's our main thing. We need to find a way to market our games without that physical presence. So they've all come up with these solutions, basically ripping off the Nintendo Direct in various different forms.
Yeah.
And now they've all went looking like, well, this is actually a lot cheaper for us to produce than paying the what is seemingly extortionate prices to get a booth at E3, and even more for like a stage presence.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we just do this ourselves without them?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, and from a business perspective, like any kind of channel which you outright own has like tangibly better benefits than having to like rent their platform, so to speak. So yeah, and like it makes complete sense in every single way, apart from the fact I liked when E3 was a big thing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, you add in the fact that up pops Jeff Keighley, who used to run E3 for the ESA, with his own thing, Summer Games Fest, and kind of went, so we're going to put all this stuff under one umbrella still, but you still kind of get to do your own thing without really... It's kind of like half committal rather than full committing. It's like...
Yeah,
it's like,
definitely.
There's obviously talks between, let's say, Sony and Jeff Keighley, and they go, yeah, our Sony stuff, you can put that in Summer Games Fest, but we're still just going to do our own thing, really.
Yeah, and it is a shame, but like the way we now consume news, like stuff gets leaked way in advance of things actually happening now, more so than it did when E3 was kind of in its prime, and like we've all just kind of learned to consume content in vastly different formats than what E3 was suited for.
Now, I think we need to probably touch on some of the negative sides of E3 going away, at least for this yet. They haven't announced that E3 is dead, and it'll never come back.
It is, though.
But it's hard to see E3 as you know it returning. There may be something next summer called E3, but you're not having Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox and doing the whole thing, and like Square getting up and Bethesda doing the thing. Like that is done.
Yeah.
I think some of the negatives...
that was noticeably missing from the press release, wasn't it? It wasn't a case of like we're going to cancel this year, but then next year we'll be we'll do it right. It was this one's cancelled. Full stop.
They've tried to come back. They had a year. They've had, was it a year or two off because of COVID, where they couldn't do it. This year they went, right, we're going to... Right, yeah, this year I was like, we're going to come back. They've got Repop, who know what they're doing in terms of event experiences, to kind of help retool it. This was meant to be a bit of a different E3 than traditional as well. Mm-hmm. And then one by one, publishers either went, no, we're not doing it, or pulled out.
Yeah.
And if there's no games there, there's no point. The negative that I want to touch on is I feel sorry for some of the smaller players in the gaming industry in this. Because E3, when the entire industry and consumers as well, its focus is on that week, this is a time to shine. I think you can sometimes probably get lost in the mix a bit when there's so much happening. If you're like a 5-person studio publishing an indie game, you can get lost in the mix. But if you had a booth on the floor, you can get gamers hands-on with your thing dead easily while you talk to them about the game, and then that kind of hype builds up and spreads. And in terms of like business stuff, like, yeah, okay, end of the day, right, let's go to the bar. Oh, there's a guy from Square Enix, we're looking for a publisher. Let's go have a chat. That sort of networking stuff now won't happen. Yeah,
definitely. I think, as always seems to be the case in like any kind of development, like the smaller companies are going to suffer.
Yeah.
And they're not going to have there's still like trade events which are less public facing and stuff, but there's nothing of the scale of E3 anymore, to my knowledge. Like, I'm not into that.
There is other stuff out there, but E3 was kind of the big one. There's I think there's like Paris Games Week and GDC and stuff still exist. But this was like one thing that was taken away from the calendar. It's like, I think the magic of E3, as someone who's not really in the gaming industry apart from just a talking head on a YouTube channel, is, yeah, as a consumer point of view, you got all this stuff happening. Oh, what should I be excited for in my hobby? It's like Christmas. It's like, it's why I love the Game Awards, even though I do say every year it's basically a 3-hour long advert. But you're advertising the stuff that I'm excited about. I want to know what this stuff is and where it's coming from. E3 is like that in the summer. So you had E3 in the summer, Game Awards in the winter. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much as happy. So we know what's coming.
Yeah.
And we're losing that, basically. Well, to a degree, because now everyone's doing their own thing.
Yeah, but again, like when they do their own thing, they don't have the joint scale of it, do they? So it will lose a bit of magic. And I think ultimately, like E3 was at its peak when I had like the most carefree era of like gaming I could ever have had, when I had like little to no responsibility. So it's always going to have a place in my heart from that perspective. But,
well, when you're at a point in your life where you feel like you've got little to no responsibility and almost endless time, gaming, you could just get. Like, okay, so you could just try. I was more willing to try out games when I was younger because time didn't seem as precious as it does right now. Like sometimes how limited time is. Like, you almost want to go for like I want to shoot a hit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, the rest easy E3. You've done your job.
We hope you find some reincarnation. Maybe you retool it and just go, you know what, this is going to be an indie-focused event. It's never going to be the scale. As soon as Sony, Xbox, Microsoft, and Nintendo are no longer interested in it, you're never going to get the scale again. Because they're the key 3 main platform holders. These other platform holders like Luna and Steam, who don't really seem to do anything. I mean, Steam could do a whole bloody E3 thing on their own if they wanted to.
But again, they don't see the value.
They don't. Yeah. Anyway, rest easy, and maybe we'll see you next year. It's kind of sad, actually. Anyway, let's move on to PSVR2, which, to be honest, I just kind of want to say I totally called this.
Well done, Richie.
So, the report is Bloomberg has reported that Sony will have likely have sold around 270,000 units by the end of March of PSVR 2. Apparently, and none of this is fully corroborated, Sony's initial expectations were about 2 million. Then they shortened that to about 1 million by the end of March, and with like 1.5 by the end of like March next year, like a further 1.5 by March next year. They haven't even got a quarter of it. Like, yeah,
it's a hell of a shortfall, isn't it? Considering the amount of work they've poured into developing it, which in developing arguably like the best VR tech in the space. Like, yeah, it's very disappointing, but expected, I guess.
I almost feel like this is the right tech at the wrong time. Because there's in the UK, we're facing a very severe cost of living crisis, which is probably arguably started like a decade ago and seems to be accelerating, which basically means things are costing more than our wages are going up. So pretty much every day you're losing money. The money you have is worth less pretty much day on day, which is quite frankly terrifying to live through. As someone who has a single income in my household, but gaming is already a luxury. VR is a luxury on top of that.
Yeah.
PSVR 2 is an expensive luxury on top of an expensive console. And the general consensus is the tech is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe lacking the killer apps. Beyond Horizon Call of the Mountain, there's some cool looking stuff, but nothing that's clearly not moving the needle enough for the price of the platform.
Yeah, nothing to justify the price of entry. And like, you raise a really good point on like kind of lifestyle's been squeezed, especially in the UK. Over like, and I'd argue the rest of the world to a degree. Like that kind of like lifestyle squeeze, which essentially just like minimize every single year the market for this product like gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
I'm interested in PSVR 2. I know I'm quite negative on it, but I'm actually interested. I would love to own one of these things. I can't justify the cost when I look at the game, especially when I look at the games and go, I don't think these games look good enough to pull me away from the stuff I have. I already have a Switch. I'm playing Octopath Traveler 2 on it. I have a PlayStation. I've just platinumed, Hogwarts Legacy. I have an Xbox. There's still pretty much all of Halo I still need to play. I've got Game Pass. I've got PlayStation Plus. I don't actually have Switch Online, but I've got access to so many games that I haven't played that wouldn't cost me another penny that I'm all to play like right here, right now.
Yeah,
and that's where it kind of falls. Like, so if you want another £500 out of me, Sony, you got to make it worth my while. And while the tech's there, the games aren't. And even if the games were, I still don't think I would.
Yeah, I completely agree. And do you think this is something that Sony is going to double down on, or do you think it's like they're going to make a call and like almost like leave it to flounder?
I don't. For Sony as the platform holder, I think it's very much you could just go, you know what, we've done the development, it's out there in the wild, we're not selling as much as we could, but how much does it realistically cost to keep these headsets on shelves and stores? Manufacturing will slow down. You'll slow down manufacturing, so there'll be impacts there. Hopefully not too much into the guys working in the factories making these stuff. Hopefully their jobs are secure enough.
Mm-hmm.
The thing for me is more on the software development, where they realistically have to look into is like, are they going to put some of their big hitters like a Gorilla? Are they going to turn around and go to Gorilla? You need to make a Call of the Mountain 2 for 270,000 units.
Yeah, like none of the commercials stack up. So it's either Sony invests heavily into it and incentivizes like developing.
Yeah, is Naughty Dog, is Sony Santa Monica going to take up the mantle? It's like, probably not. When they look at it and go, well, the cost to develop, say, a Last of Us VR experience, you look at the 270,000 units and go, why are we spending all this time on that when we could just be working on our other projects? It just doesn't make finance. And that's only first party as well.
Mm-hmm.
Third party, if I'm looking at developing an exclusive title for PSVR 2 as a developer, I'm looking at it and going, not worth it. I'll develop for Oculus. I'll develop for other platforms. I have a bigger install. I'll develop for PSVR 1 right now over VR 2.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, it's simple math, isn't it? You can do it on the back of a napkin, where it's like, all right, 300,000. Optimistically, I get what? A third. Like, if my game penetrates a third of that market, which is very, very good, like, it's still like fuck all units, basically, like 100,000.
Yeah.
To fuel an entire development cycle, it's just no.
Let's say you make £10 profit on every title you sell, after you've counted for overheads and stuff in terms of development costs. If you get a third of that 300,000, that you're making 100,000 profit. That I'd love to have £100,000 in the bank, but I don't have a game studio to run.
And for like what a year, say it's like an indie title, like say like 18-month development cycle. It's not a lot of money for the effort. Does that pay your staff's wages? So Sony would have to bag of cash this to get it. Sony would have to will this in existence. Yeah, I don't think they will in this kind of climate. What I think the future for VR2 is going to be is this 270,000 units is going to slowly tick up and tick up and tick up and tick up and tick up. And there's no need to actually... PSVR2, I think the reason why it's not compatible with PSVR 1 is they've redesigned the platform. Mm-hmm. So I think this could be the platform going forward. So we could be sat there plugging our PSVR2s into our PlayStation 6s.
So this could still be in the market 10, 15 years from now. No problems at all. So you could just look at it as this is just going to be a long burn. We've done the development. It'll eventually pay for itself over a long period of time. You kind of amortize their costs across decades.
Yeah, I mean they can't magic the clock and get that investment back now. So
and I don't think VR as a gaming space is as healthy as it used to be. But there's still developers who are passionate about VR. So, like, for example, Capcom. Capcom love making VR Resident Evil titles. So that'll come to VR too.
There's definitely some gems in there. It's just...
So yeah, I don't think Sony are going to really throw the weight behind and go, this is going to revolutionise gaming. They'll probably look at it as a disappointment, but I don't think it's dead. I think this can be fine.
Yeah, I think they'll just coast with low expectations, would be my hope.
It really depends on how much it costs them to keep it alive. If it doesn't cost that much to keep it afloat, you can just wait this out and eventually it will grow. It's kind of like cloud gaming in a way. It's like, it's not there, it hasn't got that critical mass yet. But if you're patient and you're willing to sustain the cost that keeps it going, it can become this great thing.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But yeah, good luck to PlayStation VR 2. We hope you find your home. I mentioned Capcom, Rob. Resident Evil 4, you've been playing it. So have a lot of people. Specifically, 3 million copies were sold in 2 days.
Everybody should play this game.
Everyone is. 3 million people in 2 days bought it.
Like those are good numbers.
That is really good numbers. Like,
yeah. But again, like Capcom have been on this like hot streak of remakes when it comes to like 2, 3, 4. It's a proven formula. People want it. They're doing a good job of implementing it.
Yeah.
Good for them. Reap the benefits.
So, like, while we're on this, like, because it's only it's a small tidbit. It's not really much of a story. We know it's a great game that everyone's bought. There's not really much more to that. What I want to get into is, because Capcom are on a roll with remakes. What should they do next?
I mean, the obvious consideration is Resident Evil 5, which is a very divisive game. I really liked it when I played it. But I do feel like my brain has forgotten some of the issues it had. So like I kind of got like pulled into a couple of TikTok clips of it and like people talking about it, and I kind of forgot the part where there's some, because it's set in like an unnamed African country, and there's like sequences where like there's tribal zombies throwing spears at you. Like there's huge problems with like some of the tones of that game. Do you think Resident Evil 5 is one of them games where there's a ton of people who played it and enjoyed it, if they played it in a vacuum, where if they were involved in like gaming, if they're talking to any sort of gaming press, like they'd know it by, you'd hear the reputation that it's a terrible game, that kind of thing? Because I only really know it by reputation. Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously I'm like a bigger Resident Evil fan than most, so I still really liked it. There was some mechanics which kind of were annoying, like the AI on your co-op kind of partner was god awful. But lots of kind of AI companions were awful during that time period. Like they're not unique for it. I'd want to see Resident Evil 5 remade. Obviously take away some of the problematic stuff. Scenes. Yeah, but I think overall, like I don't think it's an issue having a Resident Evil set in an African country. You just need to give that country its kind of respect, probably. I mean, don't pretend like the nation's like they're intending to set it in like a Wakanda or anything. Like, you know, like maybe get some input from the people who actually live there instead of just like portraying it as just. We were joking during our Resident Evil 4 stream how like
is this just what Capcom view like a random like Spanish village? Is this just how they see it?
Yeah.
Like, is it kind of the same thing? Like, yeah, maybe if you're going to sit and say Uganda, you go to Uganda, you get some people who know about Uganda on the team consulting, like that kind of thing.
Like one person has been there, so like we'll just take their word as gospel because this is how Western Europeans live.
It's like one of the team. I went to Europe once, so this is how Spain is. Where did Europe go? In Europe, did you go to? Bristol.
It's like I'm the authority on European living now.
Yeah.
So you are definitely right. Like they need to actually, if they're going to set it in like in an African nation, they need to do that justice, not in rose-tinted spectacles, but at least an attempt at some accuracy. I
feel like if they were to remake Resident Evil 5, this is one where they could almost just do whatever they want with it. Like, it doesn't have where when they're remaking like 2 and 3 and 4, there's a lot of people going, "Oh, what you doing there? Like, be careful with this. This is a beloved game. Like, don't mess this up. We'll be angry if you mess this up." I think with Resident Evil 5, everyone's like, "You're remaking Resident Evil 5?" It's like, okay, then, like, let's see what you've got. Do whatever you want.
But then also on top of that, there's also Code Veronica, which could do for a remake as well of the mainline series. But I don't think they could do 6 again because it's just the mechanics are too modern and to the point where it's like,
if I was Capcom and I was kind of looking at Resident Evil now, I kind of see like you've got these two SKUs going on. You got 7 in Village, and probably 9 will probably finish off that trilogy. And then I would probably just go, right, we've remade 2, we've remade 3, we've remade 4. Let's kind of, instead of going on to where they went on to do 5 and 6, let's do a new 5 and 6. We'll take it in a different direction to where we went last time. Yeah. And just go, you know what? Alternate universe stuff, the remakes in a different universe to the originals.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to lament
multiverse.
No one's going to lament losing the canon from number 6. I don't think.
Well, you're not losing. The way I would kind of, if I was Capcom, approach this is we're not losing the canon of 5 and 6. What we're doing is the remakes. We consider them to be a different universe in the Resident Evil multiverse. So while what happens in 2 and 3 and 4 are canon, what happens in 2, 3, and 4 remakes are also canon in a different way. So
I think the only important thing is if they do remake 5, I do not want to see them shrink Chris Redfield in any way, shape or form. He must remain like the superhero
punching boulders
version. Yeah, like he needs to punch that boulder.
Is it Resident Evil 5 that the name's from?
Yeah, like there's literally a quick time event where you have to punch a boulder into submission to cross the lava pit.
Interestingly, Push Square ran a poll asking people who like that site, which is me included. Actually, I use Push Square a lot when pulling these shows together. What game should Capcom remake next? They had almost 4,000 votes. And starting from number 9 is Resident Evil 0, got 75 votes. Lost Planet got 79 votes. Breath of Fire got 114 votes. Dead Rising got 128 votes. Onimusha got 174 votes. Resident Evil 5 gets 420 votes. Big jump there between Onimusha and Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 1996, so the original Resident Evil, not the remake, got 455 votes. Less than I was expecting, because that would be the one I'd put my money on, actually. Just to finish out the original 4. Like, I know it's been remade once, but do it again with the current Resident Evil. Resident Evil called Veronica X got 1,042 votes. So again, another big jump from the original Resident Evil. So
I think 25% of the vote, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. More than. There was less than 4,000. They got over 1,000, so.
Yeah, I think it would be a good call because there's lots of lore which gets explored in Veronica.
Yeah, so I dare say if Capcom are going to remake Resident Evil, fans of Push Square think it should be Code Veronica next. But winning, and I wish Chris was here for this, Dino Crisis, 1,091 votes. that is fans of Pushware voted that Dino Crisis should be what the remake.
Like, I love Dino Crisis, but for me, it feels like it was a game of its time. That's my.
But that might be why he needs a remake. Find a way to.
Maybe.
I think. I'm not sure if I was Capcom, I would do a remake of Dino Crisis. I think I might just make a new game and just start the series again, almost. But in some ways, a remake is easier because you already have a lot of the blueprint of what the game is. A lot of things like the overall level design is all kind of mapped out. The narrative is already done. You just kind of need to tweak them things and then you can start building.
Yeah.
So
I just don't want them to focus on anything else apart from putting out Resident Evil titles because they're on a good run at the moment.
Which, well done, to be fair, well done Capcom, because it looked like Resident Evil was pretty much dead with how 5 and 6 was received.
Yeah, like as a massive fan of the series, like going through that period of especially 6, like hated 6, and then the terrible movies and the Netflix show and
the original Resident Evil movie was great.
They still have a weird charm. Like 1 and 2 have a weird charm for me.
Yeah, it went off the rails, but I think Resident Evil as a franchise, I think they just kind of lost grip of it, the narrative. Like it gets weird and overly complex and very convoluted, and it's like they kind of need to tighten that back up.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much like Mila Jovovich, whatever, was like carrying that franchise as well for me.
And definitely the later movies.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I'm happy to see it back where it belongs in like on gaming Mount Olympus, if you want.
Yeah, we've got a couple of big stories that we need to jump into next. The next one will be Final Fantasy 16 goes gold. So they've sent the discs off to print ahead of the June release date, so quite early actually. And the main thing I kind of wanted to touch on with this is, does going gold matter anymore? Like, is this even like a milestone that people need to care about? Because in the past, especially like you got your disc and that's the game, that's it. So going gold was once you go gold, that's it. But we live in the era of day one patches and digital downloads and streaming games. So it's like going gold. It doesn't really mean anything. Like
no, and like the tier for it as well. Like obviously, like the market is so much bigger for the product itself. I feel like platinum's like the measure for success now, right? That's like going gold doesn't really seem to be like a thing that gets celebrated much.
I think it's a good sign though that they have the game. Yeah. The game is content complete and to a standard where they feel comfortable actually literally making the discs. Obviously, of course, probably up until June when it comes out for the next 2 months, they're going to be hard at work bug fixing and patching things and optimizing. But I think it's nice to see that like a publisher have a game in good stead on track to the release date and actually seeming like breaking this news quite earlier than people would expect.
Yeah.
When we're going through an era of constant delays. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who goes, if you need to delay your game. But it's nice to hear like Square going, you know what, we're pretty much there. It's not like, it doesn't feel like they're going to force the June deadline at this point. It feels like, no, that seems, from what we know, that seems achievable for them. And that gets me excited, to be honest, for this game.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to see things running smooth, relatively smoothly compared to some of the disasters we've seen in the past kind of 18 months.
My only issue with Final Fantasy 16 in terms of me getting excited for this game is Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth is also this year. And I haven't played Crisis Core yet, which was December, January?
What's that line from Captain Price in Modern Warfare 2 about stopping an oil
What kind of name is soap?
No, it's like
Yeah.
the way to stop an oil rig fire is to like make a bigger explosion next to it, and it snuffs out the flame. It feels like that's what Final Fantasy VII Part 2 is going to do for Final Fantasy 16.
I mean, there's going to be probably about 5 months between them, so there's a substantial amount of time, but is it enough? Is it a case of if 16 drops? I don't know, it's like, if 16... Is 16 a day one purchase for me, or is it a case of I'm going to wait and maybe just do a massive Final Fantasy binge at the end of the year? I don't know. It's like, it looks great.
It's not day one for me. I think I'll just see how it's received.
I think it's day one for me. It might be a day one purchase, but it might not be a day one play. I think I'll see what I've got on at the time.
Yeah.
Because I've got Jedi Survivor coming. Once I finish Octopath, it's probably Jedi Survivor next. So then it probably actually, if I say roughly one big game a month, Octopath April, Jedi Survivor May, I might be ready for it in June actually.
Let's see what comes along.
Yeah, we'll see what comes along. And I think the last story of the week, because I don't think we could have a PlayStation podcast without touching on The Last of Us every single week. This is kind of 2 stories I'm just going to merge into one. So The Last of Us PC port was problematic.
Yeah, quite so, I think. I haven't personally played it, so the caveat is there, like, I don't know how much it's overblown compared to what, like, the average, like, the percentage of people who've seen issues, but I'm not seeing good things.
Yeah, there was a lot of glitches. There was an infamous messed up photo, like screenshot of Joel going around. There's all sorts of like weird bug. It just felt buggy. Basically, from what I could tell, it's a buggy mess. However, there is a hotfix in place. Don't know at this point how much that has fixed the problems. Again, I don't have Last of Us on PC. If I want to play Last of Us, I literally have the game behind me still. It's next to my PlayStation. Like, that's how I would play that game. And but it's still kind of sold 36,500 in 3 days. Oh, no, that's concurrent plays, which is on the PC port of Last of Us. It's currently of Sony games. It's currently sitting 4th behind God of War, Marvel Spider-Man Remastered, and Horizon Zero Dawn.
I think it talks to the strength of the franchise especially after the HBO show. I'd argue like The Last of Us right now is probably in its biggest, like strongest cultural kind of impact it's ever been in. Yeah.
So, Last of Us came out and was one of the best games of all time. Then they ported it to the PS4, and it was one of the best games of all time. Then they brought out Last of Us 2, which is, while controversial and more of a Marmite experience, still probably one of the best games of all time. Then they've remade this as one of the best games of all time. Then they brought out their TV show, which is one of the best TV shows of all time. And then and finally PC players get to play it. So people who are just PC players probably been hearing literally about this game for decades, and you need to play it, need to play it, need to play it, need to play it. Finally getting their hands on it, and it's a bit of a mess. Which got to be disappointing as a PC player if they experience it like that. But I think Naughty Dog, I think they've got enough credit to go, you know what, this is a misstep, and they will get it fixed.
Yeah, I mean, it still feels like a mystery to me, like how things can be released in past kind of QA, but there's inner movements in these companies which I'm nobody is kind of privy to, which, you know, there's bigger forces than developers saying this game's ready.
I mean, this is speculation now, but I think there's something to be said for PlayStation is a very closed-off ecosystem. Naughty Dog are very familiar at developing only for the PlayStation ecosystem. This is their kind of first big attempt to develop a game for outside of that. And PC is the Wild West. Like, we are both using PCs right now, and I bet you there isn't a single common component.
No. We'd be lucky if we have the same chipset, really.
Yeah, like, are you on Intel?
Yeah, I'm Intel.
Okay, so we're both on Intel.
Okay.
So
Are you a K? Actually, are you an F? Are you a?
I'm not an F. I'm neither. I'm just an I9.
See, that's what we see already.
But I think I'm 11th gen. You're probably 13th because yours PC's newer than mine.
Yeah, but we probably lost half the listeners already. For like just everyone just shut up.
If we lose half the listeners an hour into the show, I'm okay. Thank you guys for sticking around. I love you.
Yeah.
I think we'll wrap up there. There's a few other stories I wanted to touch on. Like, I'll just rattle through them, just the headlines, just because we didn't have time to talk about them properly. The voice actor from Tia claims that it's not the last you've seen of him, implying there may be another God of War or spin-off or something coming. There's rumours coming around that maybe Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake is going to be next year. Avatar Frontiers of Pandora looks like it's going to leak in June. Details leak ahead of Ubisoft Forward in June, so there's more information about that out there. If there's time, we might cover that on XPass yesterday. And there's new advert for Remote Play, which honestly is weird. I wasn't expecting a new advert to come for Remote Play, but there it is. And I use Remote Play. I think Remote Play is useful. But
yeah, I mean, good, I guess.
And that's all we have time for this week. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell icon so you know notified when all of our great content goes live, such as the aforementioned XPass, such as me getting my ass kicked in Elden Ring this week, such as Chris diving into Luna for the first ever time on the channel. My name's been Richie.
I've been Robert.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.